So, good evening, y'all. I'm a Southerner. I was born in Ashland, Kentucky, now live in Chicago, and had the wonderful experience to spend 3 years in Canada. I'm Vicki Heyman.
And I'm Bruce Heyman. I'm Bruce Heyman. I belong to her.
So, are you working on there?
No, this isn't working, so we'll have to share.
You can never make the crossing that she made. For such great voyages in this world do not exist anymore. But every day of your lives, the miles of that voyage between that place and this one, you cross. Every day, that journey is. Tony Kushner begins his prolific play, Angels in America, with these words from the character Rabbi Isidore Kamelwitz. He is speaking at the funeral of Sarah Ironson, a Jewish immigrant to the United States. With these words, he seeks to eulogize both Sarah and the entire generation of immigrants who struggled and fought so that their children and grandchildren could have a better life. Rabbi Kamelwitz wants the mourners to understand they carry Sarah's journey within themselves every day. This is a photograph of my great-grandmother, Taiba. And this is the Rottenberg Steamship Agency shipping ledger bearing her name and the names of her 5 children. The ledger documents their immigration to Canada through London from Belarus, secured by my great-grandfather for $31.65 in 1911. When I discovered it in the Jewish archives in Toronto, I was profoundly moved. What must her voyage have been like? A mother and her 5 children in steerage class, and the youngest, only a 6-month-old baby. What motivates someone to endure something like that? I believe it is love. Taiba's husband, my great-grandfather Sam, and their oldest, my grandfather Charles, were waiting for them. Sam and Charles had come to Canada first, seeking religious and economic opportunity, and they found it. The North American dream. In 1916, Charles left Canada, came to the U.S., and opened a small barber shop in Cincinnati, Ohio. Thus began my family's immigration story. Sam and Taiba were able to give their children a chance for a better life in North America. That is what their voyage was for, and that they did for love. While steamship voyages across the ocean, like the ones of my great-grandmother, Taiba, and Tony Kushner's Sarah Ironson, no longer exist, other voyages continue. We see it at our airports and at our southern border. Canadians see it at their border. What people are willing to do for the chance, just the chance, for a better life for their children. Human beings are amazing. What we are able to endure for love. But hate and fear can be just as powerful. And there are powerful, hateful voices in our country who do not see the faces of the tired and the poor and the huddled masses yearning to breathe free, but instead they see the immigrant, their skin color, their religion, or the circumstances of their journey as a threat, and they are unable to see that journey as their own.
When I was a child, I sat next to my grandfather, Sam, a Russian immigrant, during a play, Fiddler on the Roof. I thought perhaps this musical might be a snapshot of his world before coming to the United States. And at the end of the show, I asked him, "Grandpa, was that what it was like?" And he answered with a smile, "Yes, but I don't remember as much singing and dancing when we were there." When Sam immigrated to the United States, he left behind the most awful set of circumstances: persecution, the threat of conscription into the Russian army, an absence of hope. See, Jewish families would either flee or their parents would maim their sons so they didn't have to join the army and face an almost certain death. My grandfather fled conscription to the Russian army, and shortly after his arrival in America, he was drafted into the U.S. Army. And he turned around and went back to Europe to fight a war for his new home country. But this was no ironic tragedy. He cherished the opportunity. My grandfather knew his journey and this fight was for a better life, for the ones he loved, and a better life they truly had. His whole family came over. And in America, he put his kids through college, and they all made lives for themselves. I cherish my grandfather's World War I uniform. I wore it as a kid. I carried it with me to my swearing in as the U.S. ambassador to Canada, and brought it with me to the embassy as a reminder of what he fought for, what his journey was for, and what America is and what America represents.
Our immigration stories are similar to many of yours, whether you're a Canadian or you're an American. Our parents, great-grandparents, grandparents, and beyond made huge sacrifices in hopes of achieving the North American dream of citizenship, a life of opportunity and security for their children. We are the recipients of the good fortune that came as a direct result of their struggles through poverty, illness, and war. We feel a great responsibility to pay it forward and to keep the door to immigration open. We cannot walk through that door and close it behind us. We must engage in protecting the democracies that allow people to seek freedom and opportunity. And how do we do that? We vote.
Canada and the United States are indeed neighbors and best friends. As friends and neighbors, Canadians have been there for us in our time of need, whether it be in the Iranian hostage crisis, providing comfort in the aftermath of 9/11, or with us side by side as our brothers and sisters defended our shared values across the globe. President Obama called this 5,200-mile border between our two countries the longest border of peace in the world. We share so much. And as countries, we share similar democratic values, but our bond goes deeper than that. While serving as the U.S. Ambassador to Canada, it was clear there were many American citizens living in Canada, and countless Canadians told us with pride of the story of their family living in the U.S. Oftentimes, I'd be stopped by a very zealous Canadian who would tell me about their first cousins living in cities like Cleveland, Ohio, who they thought I must have known intimately. So in that sense, and in the case of Vicki's immigration and her story, we share family.
As friends and neighbors, our relationship is truly symbiotic. We are fully connected. Our air, our water, our families. If the U.S. is eliminating protections for our environment, if we continue inaction on gun violence, if we are detaining families and making our citizens more fearful. This impacts Canada as well. We want to protect the democratic values of the country that our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents sacrificed so much to attain. We want to do this by engaging all American citizens in the United States and outside of our borders to participate in the democratic process of voting.
Now, according to the United States government, the Federal Voting Assistance Program, also known as FVAP, there are about 5.5 million U.S. citizens living overseas, and just over 3 million are eligible to vote. The largest number of these U.S. citizens living abroad who are eligible to vote live in Canada. FVAP estimates the number is 675,000 eligible American voters. Get this. Less than 6% of these expats voted in the 2016 election. Let that number sink in. Less than 6%. Okay, that means 94% didn't vote. In the 2016 presidential election, the Electoral College outcome was decided by 77,000 votes across 3 Great Lakes region states, the swing states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. In Michigan, the voter margin was less than 11,000. So with such large numbers of Americans eligible to vote in Canada, expats can really make an outsized impact. So as your best friend and your neighbor, Canada, we need your help. This is a call to action to engage every eligible American citizen living in Canada to vote in the 2020 election.
If you're an American citizen, yeah, come on. If you are an American citizen living outside of the United States, and if you are eligible to vote, make sure you are registered at fvap.gov and vote in the primary and the general election in 2020. To our Canadian friends and neighbors who are not American citizens, help us. Please encourage your American friends, family members to register, and most importantly, to vote. Spread the words to your American friends. Tell them about these numbers and our story and how impactful their vote can be. We know and believe it is a privilege, but most importantly, an obligation for every eligible U.S. citizen across the world, regardless of the country they live in, to participate in the democratic process that so many sacrificed so much for. Some time ago, Canada's Governor General, Julie Payette, came to Chicago to visit. We had dinner, and she talked about being an astronaut and looking back on Earth. She laid out a photo taken from space, and she asked if everyone recognized the photo, and we did. It was the Great Lakes and the Great Lakes region. She asked what we didn't see in the photograph, what we didn't recognize, what we couldn't see. We could not see borders. In many ways, we all know we are humans, and we are living in a borderless world.
But Americans don't just live within the borders of the United States. We reside all over the planet as citizens, and we have the right, and I believe the responsibility, of determining the path of our country. Just to have an opinion, just to tweet, or liking or sharing a post, no, that's not enough. Our vote is our voice. A healthy, functional democracy is dependent upon the participation of each and every one of us. We encourage Americans, wherever we are, that we should be voting. Let's not take democracy for granted.
Register and vote. We can easily do this. We must do this. Future generations of family, friends, and neighbors are depending on us.
Thank you.
Thank you.